Yo, what up guys? Welcome to Jacksoft to another adventure. So after visiting all these different Chinatowns up here in NorCal, we now have a better understanding of the history of early Chinese here in California, but also the different reasons why they settled in different areas. For example, San Francisco was pretty much the starting point, right? And then eventually they moved inland towards Sacramento, Stockton, and Marysville because it was closer to the gold mines. Well, after the gold mines were depleted, a lot of the Chinese were hired to work on the railroad, which extended south towards LA. So a lot of them settled in places like Fresno and Visalia. We also have the Chinese that were in the Sacramento Delta, like Locke and Walnut Grove, working on levee projects and also agriculture. Well, right now, I'm in a little town called Mendocino, up here in the California North Coast. And believe it or not, there used to be a Chinatown here too. Now, I don't know too much about the history here, but luckily, after doing all these enthusiastic videos of Chinatown, one of the board members from the Kwan Tai Temple here in Mendocino reached out to me and offered to give me a history lesson. So today, we will learn more about the Chinese history here in Mendocino. So join me as Jacksoft to Mendocino. Let's go! And here it is, the Kwan Tai Temple, right here. Hi, you must be Lorraine.
Hi.
Hi.
Come on in.
Thank you. How you doing today?
I'm doing fine.
Wow.
So what would you like to know about the temple?
Everything.
My great-grandfather actually sailed here in the early 1850s because he had heard about the California gold rush. And so he and his brother, who were farmers and came from the northern part of Hong Kong inland to come here because they thought they could get rich, of course. And so what they did is they actually started out with 6 other sampans to come here, and they were all originally going to embark in Monterey because there was a fishing village there. But unfortunately, only 2 ships survived crossing the Pacific Ocean. And my great-grandfather accidentally landed up here and not in Monterey, and 1 ship did land in Monterey. So because they got really quick sailing lessons and just struck out. So when he came here, he landed up at Casper Beach, and I can take you up there.
Okay.
Okay, according to the oral history, that's where he landed and discovered, oh, there isn't gold on the streets as the stories had said. So there was a lumber camp, that was kind of operating. So with no money, he decided to work there for a little while. Then he made his way down here because this was a much bigger community, and even though it doesn't look like it's a big community, all the coastal cities were really large, much larger than they are now. They're like ghost towns compared to what it was. And in Mendocino, there were a lot more jobs to be had and a lot more industry happening. So what happened was that we're not really sure, because my father's oral history says that I think he worked in the lumber camps, but then he ended up becoming somebody's cook and then started his own business, is what he basically did. And as the word got out about jobs, so more Chinese started to migrate here.
From San Francisco?
From all over.
From all over, okay.
So what happened is that because of that, they built this temple, and we can date it back as far as 1854.
Wow.
They built this temple, and what you see here, all the old stuff is original. And then we just added some shiny new stuff that we have, my sister and I have, in our travels to Taiwan and to San Francisco, because as little kids, we always went to San Francisco. So, if we saw something that we could add to the temple, we did. So basically what you're seeing here is the old pewter is original, and then where the incense are and the Josh candles are actually in the original prayer boxes, and no ashes have been removed.
Wow.
And according to the temples that we've visited in Taiwan, you're not supposed to remove the ashes. So those ashes date back to the early 1850s as well.
No way.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I was told by a monk that was here, and I don't know how many years ago, that when he came to visit from Los Angeles, he was a visiting monk, had said this temple was really special, and I always just smiled and said, of course it is, because it's, you know, it's my family. But what he said, no, here in this spot, because temples, you know, according to the feng shui concept, have to be plotted by a priest. They say where they need to be built, and that it was selected here versus down on the headlands. I don't know if you were here earlier.
Yeah.
If you walk down the headlands, that was Chinatown.
Oh, wow.
All that open field. And so he said it was plotted here. And if you notice, you climb 9 steps, which has to do with the feng shui concept again. Evil spirits can't climb 9 steps. And that's why we can have unexposed windows. Whereas in Weaverville, it's built on ground level, and there's screens in front of their windows because it's the belief that evil spirits can't go around corners. So basically, you know, that's why they have 9 steps. And then in addition to that, when there was a priest on the premises full time, and it was in the late 1870s, they added on another room so that the priest had a place to sleep.
Oh, wow.
And so the temple was open 24 hours a day, because in Taiwan, they're open 24 hours a day. People can come and go. And this temple technically at that time was as well.
Okay.
And it was during that time period as well that the Chinese community basically put in money and helped actually purchase the property, because they didn't own it then. And so my great-grandfather, along with the Chinese community, had paid, you know, I think it was Ford for the land, and it wasn't cheap. It was like $100 and something in gold, like $170 in gold. And that's a lot of money in those days. So Mendocino's real estate, well, in some parts was really cheap, but to the Chinese, for this 30 by 80 lot, that was a lot of money. And so they literally owned the property outright, which I'm kind of wondering how they could, because technically on the laws, they weren't supposed to be able to own any property. But it seems this county kind of was, I think they were really kind of back and forth on what laws they would apply. Because the marriage law, they did strictly enforce it, because my father and mother, who were married in the 40s, couldn't marry because she was white. The town of Mendocino, it was a city at that time because it was incorporated, actually was much more lenient with the Chinese. Their racism was more covert than overt, versus Fort Bragg and Westport and along the coast. Those communities were more outright in terms of their racism, and had monthly meetings, you know, try to figure out how to expel the Chinese. Whereas in Mendocino, they didn't have those meetings. And actually the Mendocino Beacon boasted about them not having these meetings. And I think my surmise is that they realized they needed the labor. They needed the major labor force. Because the Chinese here not only worked in the lumber camps, they had a lot of business. They had restaurants, they had lodging houses, and one of the things that they had, if you look at the Sandporn maps from 1870 on, at that time, there were 7 Chinese herbal shops. So they had to say there was a substantial population to support those businesses. Because one of the, quote, traditional historians who was not Chinese said, oh, there wasn't, you know, because my father always told me there were 500 to 700 Chinese here at one time. And, you know, the traditional historian said, oh, no, that's not really true. And I said, why do you say that? I said, because oral history basically is pretty on. And she said, oh, no, that's not really true, because the U.S. Census Bureau doesn't have them. And so for me, I was considered to be snotty. And I said, excuse me, if you're illegal, you're not going to say, hi, count me.
Exactly, yeah.
And I said, because my great-grandfather was illegal. He just sailed in and just started working. And she just kind of looked at me and took back. And I said, and the herb shops also verify there had to be a substantial population. I said, your group didn't support those businesses. Just before you cross the bridge, there is this, on the south end, there is Sanford Inn, and then there's the coastline. All of that property was the Chinese gardens. They leased that property because there was a year-round stream that flowed through the property. And they created commercial gardens. And what they did is they grew stuff, and then sold it back to the town here because most of the town folks didn't have a clue what could grow here and what couldn't. And so they had a commercial market right there. And they're the ones that introduced the fishing industry to the rest of the mainstream society here. They're the ones that introduced, if you look up, they're the ones that introduced the red abalone to mainstream society. And it was in 1906 that Fish and Game decided to regulate the red abalone because, you know, they were watching the Chinese bring this up. And the Chinese here actually made, you know, did commercial fishing. They took the shrimp, they took the scallops, they took the abalone, dried them all, and then shipped them overseas to mainland because they could make quite a bit of money. Racism, as I said, was covert here. And when we grew up, we got a lot of name calling because we were half. We were half white and half Chinese, and that was not acceptable. So we were, in terms of class level, is on the very bottom of the rung.
Wow.
You know? So the Portuguese were much higher than us, kind of thing. And it's like class really played a difference. And even when I was growing up, this temple wasn't really acknowledged. This temple really didn't gain its recognition until the National Trust had taken an interest in this to give us a seed grant to be able to save the building, to be able to restore and rehabilitate it. And then when we reached national news, then the town said, oh, maybe we should look at this. And then all of a sudden, and then when the California Preservation also helped us, then the community said, oh, there's something here. And not acknowledging that we're one of the oldest original buildings left in Mendocino. So along with the Catholic Church and the Presbyterian Church and the McAllen House, which is now the Corners McAllen House, those are original buildings. The Chinese kind of amassed here and then migrated wherever the jobs were. And after the 1900s, the lumber industry kind of fell off. And so there weren't a lot of jobs to be had, and so they moved to wherever the jobs were at the time. But at the peak, there was a high demand for labor, and one of the things that the Chinese were well known for here in this area as being cooks. And that was one of the old timers told me, well, because they can cook anything and make it taste good. So, you know, and they discovered they could get the best lumberjacks if they kept them well fed. And so that was the whole thing. And the theory proved true because in the 1920s, when Union Lumber Company decided to build an outlying camp, they built a mess hall and basically a lodging hall so that the lumberjacks didn't have to commute back into Fort Bragg every night. They had a place to stay, fed, and then they would come home on the weekends because that way they could get more work out of the lumberjacks. And so when they did that, they recruited cooks from San Francisco in the 20s to cook in this mess hall.
Wow.
Yeah. I could go on and on. So, you know, there's a lot of history here. But this temple, we have not, the only thing that's really new is the floor.
Oh, wow.
We had to replace that. But, you know, what you're seeing here, the boards on the walls and stuff.
These are all original?
Yeah.
Wow.
It's virgin redwood.
Wow, this is amazing right here.
So, but walk around. One of the things that we had to stand, if you look at it, it really is old, but it had all these holes in it, and it had this, but we never understood what it was. Then when we went to Taiwan, and we saw this, and we go, oh, this holds the Celestial Army. So we brought the flags back of the armies. But, you know, before we could bring them back, they had to be blessed in the temple. And then we brought them back. And so Loretta is the one that has the power to call up the army, the Celestial Army. And then this here, actually, supposedly, because they were convinced, but we know it's not because Loretta's unwrapped this and wrapped it back up. It's a wooden box and it's supposed to hold ashes. And it's for the funerals, for death. But it's just a solid wooden redwood block in there. So that's the thing. And then this piece and this piece, when we went to Taiwan, one of the mayors in Taiwan wanted to have us, you know, donate this and bring it and put it back, you know, put it in the temple, which we did. So this is a gift from a mayor in Taiwan.
Wow.
Yeah.
Do you know who? Was it Ma Ying-jeou?
I don't know. You know, we went back in 2000 and was like 30 days after 9/11.
Oh,
And he was just elected. He had only been in office for 6 months. And he said he attributes Kwan Tai as for his success in the election because he feels like he wouldn't have been elected if it wasn't for this God, which he embraced. So it was kind of interesting talking to him through a translator. And all of this stuff here really is original. And these fortune sticks are original as well.
wow. And these two, right? You throw it and then depending on what side they land on.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, it's not what side, they actually, what comes out. Because I've been taught you hit it and one moves out more than the other. And then there's the writing on it. And to have, you know, as far as I know, in terms of the interpretation, back here, which we have right here, is the book.
So small. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
It actually in the center has Kwan Tai's picture and the followers, but there are, you know, writings about. So we keep it back here because it really is an old book, and we want people to pick it up and stuff.
Wow.
But all of the stuff here has been unearthed around the camps where the Chinese were, and so this gentleman had returned them.
Wow.
So, which is nice. So, and then these are more altars that we have picked up along the way. Well, one of the altars was actually at a thrift store, and someone called us, and so we said, "Oh yes, of course we'll take it." Is where my great-grandfather came in, and there's talk years ago somebody was diving down here and they had found some remnants of dishes. You can find dishes and stuff of here in the bay, of this bay. Basically, if we walk down here would be the...
Wow, so the ship landed here somewhere.
Yeah. And this is the beach. And there are times when you walk down here, you can still find some Chinese pottery.
No way.
So,
You're gonna tempt me into like digging now.
oh, it's really low tide. Wow.
Wow.
Good.
So this is where the ship landed right here and started the history.
This area. I don't know exactly, but just in this bay somewhere.
Wow.
Well, you'll have time to really explore then, coming back. I know you'll be tempted to come back.
Wow.
Wow, this is more that I've seen.
So I guess you don't take people out here a lot, huh?
No.
There's not a lot of special guests.
No.
I'm privileged, and thank you for babysitting me. Thank you so much for babysitting me.
Oh no, my pleasure.
All right, thank you, and take care.
Bye.
All right, bye. All right, so that's pretty much the gist of the Chinese history here in Mendocino. But since we're here, let's go walk around Main Street and check out the very small town here. Let's go.
Well, why not? It takes less time than texting.
So yeah, you got a couple of little stores around here. Not too busy around here. And then of course, well, you can't really see with all these cars, but you got all the view. We'll go back there in a little bit. But yeah, Main Street's like pretty small. You got like 2 or 3 blocks. That's pretty much it. Oh, hey, you got cameras here. Out of this world. So what I've been told was this out of the world store, this one used to be a Chinese laundry that turned into a store now. And then here in Mendocino, you'll also see all these like water towers around here. So yeah, I think that's pretty much it. Shops and stuff. Well, it's not a Chinatown, so I'm not too enthusiastic about it. So let's go check out the little scenic area. So yeah, if you're an outdoor enthusiast, there is an outdoor trail here. You got the outdoors, you got beaches around here you can go check out. You do have to climb some cliffs though. And then that right there is Main Street. Looks pretty cute, but pretty small though. So yeah. So Lorraine did mention that the Chinese used to plant cabbages here. Now, I am not a plant enthusiast, so I don't know how they look like. Or maybe these are it? I'm not sure. Or are these it? Can some plant enthusiasts help me out here? Help out a Chinatown enthusiast? But yeah, there's all sorts of plants over here. You just see them like randomly growing in different patches. So plant enthusiast heaven right here. So are those the wild cabbages? I have no idea, being a Chinatown enthusiast. I mean, after all, this video is about Chinese history here in Mendocino, not about the history of cabbages. So if you're a cabbage enthusiast and you're offended, well, go watch some enthusiastic cabbage videos. But please like and subscribe. Alright, so that's pretty much it for me here in Mendocino, but we're not going to end the video here yet because both Lorraine and Denise, the person that contacted me, were telling me how in Fort Bragg, there's some awesome fish tacos. So being a fish taco enthusiast, let's go get some food first before we head back. So Jack's off to some fish tacos. Let's go. So they didn't have any seats indoors, so I took it to go. Doesn't matter. And here it is, guys. The fish tacos. Don't mind me, guys. Alright guys, so I'm gonna end this video here so I can enjoy my fish tacos. But special thanks to Lorraine for babysitting me and giving me a tour of this area and also giving me a history lesson on the Chinese history in Mendocino. Also, special thanks to Denise for setting this all up. And special thanks for all you guys who are watching my video. Thank you guys for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Until my next adventures, Jack's off and Jack's out. Whoa.